What is the best metalcore album and why? Let me know down in the comment section below to join the conversation and follow me on a journey as I go through some of my favorite metalcore albums, whether it be for the sound, the personal impact it had on me, or the influence that the record had overall. This video is not going to cover records that could pass over the prog metalcore or the gent sort of thing, because I think that is a list I could make in and of itself considering how many amazing records come from that scene. I'm going to try to stick to just metalcore records, not little branches or subgenres or anything like that, just true blue in one form or fashion or another metalcore records. Starting with Killswitch Engage, As Daylight Dies. I know that there could be a lot of arguments for Killswitch records, but specifically the Howard Jones era has always meant the most to me and was such a staple for early metalcore in the 2000s, or I guess in this case second wave metalcore that came about in the 2000s, and the Howard Jones era of Killswitch Engage, showcasing that metalcore could hold on to its hallmark of the buff, gruff exterior it had had up until that point, but also showcase more of a vulnerable and emotional side with a lot of catchiness, catchy grooves, and it really became this sort of record that embodied all the signature styles of an amazing metalcore record. It is the first Killswitch record I ever heard, and it's stuck with me through all of these years. Chances are, if you step into any metalcore circle whatsoever, or if you just look at the most famous metal album covers of all time, you've seen Converge's Jane Doe. So I didn't really want to just put it on this list, but if you want a classic staple in the genre and one of the most acclaimed records in metalcore, check Jane Doe out. But I wanted to go with the Converge record, All We Love We Leave Behind. Converge has always been an anomaly in the metalcore sphere because while their later records are a little bit more cut and dry, the early records, or the earlier in comparison records from Converge, really embodied this combination of hardcore punk aggression, mathcore absurdity and tempos, but the metalcore aggression of the 2000s. And no record better encapsulates this than this one. It is equal parts erratic and chaotic, all over the place and scatterbrained, but has this level of intelligence to the riff writing and the production that to this day is some of the most shrill and brittle you'll hear in metalcore. It's actually my favorite Converge record, even over Jane Doe, and I definitely recommend it to anyone that hasn't heard it. You'll notice that a lot of the records on this list are going to be from the 2010s or 2000s, but the most recent record and the only one from 2020 forward, and I truly do stand by this, is the Ghost Inside self-titled album. Now, the Ghost Inside are obviously a pretty great metalcore band as is. They've never really reinvented the wheel or done anything that is, pushing the envelope of what metalcore can really be capable of. They've kind of stayed in a pretty status quo style, but after the tragic bus accident and after all of that, I've always said that when you have a sharp topic matter that pierces close to the heart, you cannot make up true tragedy. You can try your best to put yourself in the shoes of something or write in a storytelling aspect, but there is another level when you physically experience something so traumatic that it drives you to make this record. The Ghost Inside had no right to come back, and the complete celebration of their fan base, of the members, of the recovery, and everything that they went through to get to this point feels like this massive lament. The aggression across this record, the production across this record, it is so simultaneously like melodic but heavy, bust your brains in, but it's not the kind of heavy that just makes you want to sit and headbang the whole time. It's this crushing desperation throughout it that really feels like they are choking for life, and that it feels, like I said, like a celebration of everything that led to this point. And when this record came out, it was one of my favorites of the year, hands down, and it was, I believe, my favorite metalcore record the year it released. And I think if any modern metalcore record from 2024 deserves to be on this list, absolutely, it's this Ghost Inside record. And I am so glad that I got the privilege of seeing them live on one of their returning shows when they played at Blue Ridge Rock Fest. When it comes to more catchy metalcore and metalcore that has a sort of buzzsaw to it, but like I said, has that sort of soaring chorus quality of like the mid to late 2000s metalcore scene that would later give way to post-hardcore isms and the metalcore of the early 2010s, All That Remains with The Fall of Ideals fits this bill perfectly. This record, despite being so heavy and so shriek-led and throaty and raspy and having a pretty raw production style in the grand scheme of things, just gets in your head. It's earwormy, it's catchy. The grooves that this record really just captures are still some of the greatest metalcore riffs that I've heard coming out of the 2000s, and I remember when I first heard this record, I just had to loop it because it's one of the records on this list that front to back is just full bangers, heaters, no exceptions, and can just have so much replayability, which in my opinion is important, being able to go back to a record, and anytime I spin this record, I just can't help but get caught in those grooves. And of course, the really well-written choruses, the hyper-melodicism across all of this thing, it's a great sort of melodic metalcore record. One of the names that I think are not brought up nearly as much when it comes to metalcore would be the band Unearth, and the record that I'm going to be shouting out is The March. This was actually one of my introductions to metalcore, and anybody that's heard this record will immediately be like, holy shit, what a fantastic place to start. This thing has a production that is impenetrable, that is dense, that feels like you are trapped in a subterranean labyrinth. In the very early days of my CD collecting journey and my music collecting journey, it was one of the first records that I immediately needed to get on physical copy. It is a wonderfully written metalcore record, but it does not overstay its welcome. It stays in an extremely focused lane, and it pulls no punches. Like, it is just no bullshit, it's no frills, it's not trying to be anything but a great metalcore record. It's not trying to be pretty. It is buff, it is in your face, it does not let up, just relentless and fantastic. So you know how I said Converge has that sort of manic, erratic sort of playing? Underoath with Define the Great Line. From the very first track, you are hit with this emo-infused metalcore, and Underoath's influence on the post-hardcore, emo metalcore strain that came about in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and really got its stride then, obviously it existed before that, cannot be overstated. To this day, this is still, and I will go on the record saying this, one of the best produced metalcore records I have ever heard, considering this thing was released in what, 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. The fact that it is held up and can go toe-to-toe with some of the best metalcore records that have been released in the past 5 years or so is a testament to just how well put together and meticulously crafted this record is. It has a certain level of primordial rawness, but also so much cohesion to the way the riffs come together. Perfect balance of heaviness and melodic with that emo-ism and post-hardcore-ism being put into metalcore. It is an amazing blend, and if it is the type of metalcore that you do enjoy, you will love this record if you haven't heard it already. Y'all tripping if you thought I wouldn't bring up Bring Me the Horizon. And the record that I'm gonna go with, and I think there are multiple contenders for this, Suicide Season, fantastic record. It started their metalcore era. Sempiternal, one of the crown jewels of the 2010s metalcore scene, one of the most influential on the 2010s metalcore scene, obviously. But I ended up going with my favorite Bring Me the Horizon record, There's a Hell, believe me, I've seen it, There's a Heaven, let's keep it a secret. What a mature record that defined them so well, and it is at such an odd point in their discography because there really isn't anything whatsoever around it that sounds anything like it. Most of their records you can pick apart and say, well, this kind of has like influences from this record or that record. There Is a Hell is such a symphonic, triumphant record of pure, raw metalcore intensity. Ollie sounds incredible on this record, and I know he fucked his voice up later, but there is something about the rawness of his vocals and the shouting of his vocals that just comes off rip-roaring, and when you go into really deep songs like Crucify Me, as well as Don't Go or It Never Ends, so many of these refrains just stick out in my head. He had some of the most diverse and dynamic vocals he has ever had, dare I say he ever had, on any Bring Me the Horizon record, and the production is phenomenal. The buzzsaw of some of these riffs, the catchiness of some of these choruses, the relentless pace pretty much all the way through, and it still has that youthful exuberance that they showcased on their prior material, specifically Suicide Season, but so well fleshed out and put together. They worked out every immature kink in their past material material and brought it into the forefront, took all of the things that were amazing about their style and wrote a record that sits at the crossroads between the, raw immaturity of Suicide Season, like the we don't quite know what the fuck we're doing right now, and Sempiternal, which is the electronic bridge when Jordan Fish started to add his own influence into the band, which later turned into their sound on like That's the Spirit. Now that I think about it, I think like every single record I've listed up until this point I own on physical copy. What can I say? I'm a fucking core kid. As if the hoodie, the green Monster Energy, the painted nails, and the various stickers didn't give that away enough. Moving on from there in the similar lane of Killswitch Engage, but I would argue a little bit more leaning into that early hardcore punk aggression, As I Lay Dying with Shadows Our Security. This was also one of like the first 3 metalcore records I ever heard. It was like very early on into my teen years. Funnily enough, I got it at the CD at a garage sale of all places, which I don't care what y'all say. I have found some incredible bands and CDs and vinyls and cassettes from like Goodwills and thrift stores and yard sales and church sales and flea markets. Yeah, what can I say? This is probably the one I have the least to say about. This may just be a nostalgia pick for me, but I think when it comes to like 2000s metalcore of just, no bullshit, straight to the point, not trying to do anything like insane, while by today's standards, As I Lay Dying, specifically this record, might not be seen as like the most ingenious record, you gotta look at the date it came out and really think about that time. Speaking of riffs that make you headbang for days, and I think there are going to be a lot of people that don't particularly understand or like this pick, Asking Alexandria's Stand Up and Scream. I don't think you can quantify the importance that this record had on an entire fucking scene. And I understand there's not a single other Asking Alexandria record that sounds like this, not even Reckless and Relentless. And I understand that everyone's like, they need to go back to their old days. I don't really fully believe in that. Like, if they mature, if they like what they do now, more power to them. That's perfectly okay. But I will say this record will always have my heart. Is it a little cringy? Is it over the top? Yeah, but the electronicore influences, the synths, the way that Danny Warsnop goes into his high shrieks or his really guttural like ooh like lows, or he soars into these choruses, or Ben Bruce's inclusion, like it is so late 2000s, early 2010s metalcore, and the influence that this had on so many vocalists and so many bands that desperately wanted to sound like Asking Alexandria and the second coming of them. You just had to be there and you had to understand where they were coming from, because it was out of this world, and it's still one of my favorite metalcore records. And I understand it has a reputation, and Asking Alexandria have a reputation, but I really mean it when I say go back and listen to some of the bangers off this record. I personally like the whole record, but go listen to like A Candlelit Dinner with Inamorta, or A Prophecy, or The Final Episode, or You Can't Ride Two Horses at Once, not to mention Not the American Average. What are some of your guys' favorite metalcore records? You can let me know down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know it is. My name is G Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.